Why are we so hard on ourselves? Is it because when we were growing up, we were criticized or judged, and then we've taken those criticisms and judgments with us into adulthood and still think those things about ourselves? Is it because we think that somehow, some way, if we are mean and nasty to and about ourselves, that one day we'll just emerge these perfect, amazing, incredible human beings? There's lots of reasons why so many of us are so mean to ourselves, are so hard on ourselves. And I don't know what your reason is, but what I do know is that most of us could stand to be a lot kinder, a lot more compassionate, a lot more understanding, and have more grace for ourselves. And I'm going to talk today about specifically how to do that. Because it's one thing to say, be kinder to yourself. It's another thing to know what that actually looks like. So we're going to talk about that here. If you are new to me, and this is the first time we're connecting, my name is Kristina, and I'm a registered therapist. I have a master's degree in counseling psychology, and I work to help men and women get through the crap that is holding them back so they can like themselves and their lives more every day. And being mean to ourselves is really not helping in our attempts to like ourselves and our lives. So what is this all about? And I don't know if you've heard this term tossed around. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. But there's a word out there called self-compassion, that we need to learn to be more self-compassionate. And that sounds lovely and it sounds great, but what does it actually mean? Now, a lot of this information is based on the research of Dr. Kristina, who took it upon herself to really just dive in and research what self-compassion actually is. And in her research, she came up with 3 major parts of it. We're going to talk about what those are, and then I have a little bit of a bonus added thing for you at the end as you learn to become more self-compassionate. So the first one is self-kindness. This is the first part of self-compassion, self-kindness. Now, that sounds lovely. Like, again, it sounds really nice, but what does it mean? How do I learn to become kinder to myself? Is it just about being, I'm amazing, I'm great, I'm wonderful, I can do no wrong, and just sort of telling ourselves all of these things that may or may not be true all the time, or we may or not fully believe, may or may not fully believe? How self-kindness can really be broken down and really understood in an easy way is to think about how you would respond to a good friend who is coming to you with the same struggle, who is coming to you and sharing something that they were going through. If they were like, I just worked really hard and I had a really big failure and I'm feeling really bad and I'm feeling really disappointed, what would you say? Would you say to them, oh my gosh, you're such a loser, you're pathetic, what's wrong with you, you can't do anything right? We probably wouldn't say that to them, but we would say those things to ourselves. How many times have you said stuff like that to yourself if you haven't done something perfectly, or if things haven't gone quite right, if you've messed up or made a mistake in some way that you've just raked yourself over the coals? What would you say to a good friend who is coming to you with that struggle? You would probably say something like, man, that's really hard. I'm here for you. Let's talk about it. You know what? Like, people do make mistakes. You're not a terrible person. This stuff sometimes happens. That you're still an amazing human being. That this doesn't mean that you suck overall. So whatever you would say to a good friend who was coming to you with the exact same struggle, the exact same dilemma, the exact same internal conflict, think about the words you would use with them and use those same words with yourself. Words of kindness, of compassion, of understanding, of support, and give yourself that same kindness. So that's the first one, is self-kindness. And this is probably the most simple way to learn how to be kinder to ourselves. The next part of self-compassion is called common humanity. And what this means is that we all have our stuff. That often we have this belief that I'm the only one who sucks, or I'm the only one who's broken, or I'm the only one who's pathetic, or I'm the only one who's just not cutting it in life, or I'm the only one that's not good enough. That it looks like everybody else is doing fine and happy and good and has it all together, and I am the only one who deals with these kinds of things. But the truth is, we all have our crap. No matter what something looks like on the outside, nobody rides for free. That we all have been through things, we might be going through things right now, that just because someone looks like they have it all together and their life is great, it doesn't mean that it is. Now, that said, maybe that person is going through a really good time right now, that things are good for that person right now. But that doesn't mean that it always has been good for them. And it doesn't mean that they don't still have stuff in their lives that they're struggling with or suffering with or have struggled with or have suffered with. That we all have our stuff. And I can say this one with complete confidence and conviction as a therapist who has worked with hundreds of men and women and have seen and heard stories and gotten access to the inside track of our experience as human beings, that from all walks of life, from all success levels, from all physical appearance levels, from all social status, from anything, it doesn't discriminate, that we all have stuff that we've been through. Yeah, some of us more than others, but there's nobody that just has it all together and always has had it all together and never suffers and never struggles. So knowing that if I am feeling something, if I am struggling with something, if I am going through something, and I think to myself, oh my gosh, if ever anyone else knew that this is what I was going through, or this is how I was feeling, or this is what I was thinking, then they'd go running for the hills. That know that absolutely other people have felt the exact same way. In our common humanity, we are way more similar than different. That we all sometimes wonder if we matter, if we're good enough, if we have what it takes, if we're worthy of love, if we deserve connection. That we all have those questions. We all wonder those things. So common humanity, I'm not the only person who sucks while everybody else is doing great. That we all sometimes suck. And then our last one is mindfulness. If you've been watching my videos, you've heard me talk about this before. You maybe are getting more familiar with mindfulness, or you know a lot about mindfulness, but really what mindfulness is and the whole self-compassion process is learning how to be present with our emotions, learning how to just sit with whatever it is we're feeling without judging ourselves for feeling it, without criticizing ourselves for feeling it, without telling ourselves that we're no good or we don't have what it takes, or that we're weak or pathetic for feeling our feelings. Allowing ourselves to observe and notice and be present with what we're feeling, not pushing it aside, not spiraling down with it, but just sitting and noticing. This is what I'm feeling, whether it's right or wrong or good or bad or helpful or unhelpful or serving or unserving or logical or illogical. This is what I'm feeling. And telling myself that I'm terrible or awful or not allowed to feel it is actually not going to make me feel any better. So learning to be self-compassionate, learning to just sit with and be present with our emotions. And this isn't something that's always easy, and it is something that comes through practice. And I have a whole video on mindfulness, and I have a mindfulness exercise. I'll put the link to the mindfulness exercise in the notes here, and you can grab that afterwards. And there's also, when you get that video, that audio, there's also a link to a video that explains what mindfulness is if you're new to it. So the last part, our bonus part, our extra little tidbit of self-compassion, of learning to be less of an a-hole to ourselves. What are you waiting for? What is it that you're telling yourself that you need to be or have or become before you're going to allow yourself to like yourself, to be good to yourself, to be kind to yourself, to accept yourself? That knowing that we all have weaknesses, we all have struggles, we all have strengths, and we all have struggles. That absolutely, that getting to a place of perfection before I can start being nicer to myself or like myself or accept myself, it's just not going to happen because it just doesn't exist. And being kinder to myself and accepting myself does not mean that I'm not still learning and growing and expanding and working through things in my life. But it does mean that I accept and love myself in that process, that I love myself as perfectly imperfect, and also acknowledge that I have things to work on. But that isn't determined. Me having things to work on does not determine my worth as a human being. So what are you waiting for? And you need to ask yourself, and I want you to ask yourself, what are you waiting for in order to give yourself permission and space to be compassionate, to be kind and loving and accepting of yourself? And whatever it is, I want to ask you if you can do it anyways. If you can create space to accept yourself despite your flaws, maybe even sometimes because of them, because we all have them, as we talked about in the common humanity part of self-compassion. So learning to be more self-compassionate, cut ourselves a break, be less of an a-hole to ourselves. It will go a long ways for our mental health, for our emotional well-being, for our happiness, our sense of self-esteem and confidence. I'm glad that you were here for this one, that we had this conversation, and please do share it out. Share this message out with your people if you have people that you think would find it useful. And if you're new, subscribe to the page so we can stay connected. I'd love to hear your comments in the comment section below about the things that help you feel good about who you are. The things that you do to be more kind and compassionate and less of an a-hole to yourself. Leave that in the comments section below. And until next time, take good care.